Adi Shankar's Devil May Cry series is a very strange case because, on one side of the coin, it does everything that it can to show you that it is different than the games, that the lore from the games does not necessarily have to matter when compared to the show, and the same thing goes for the characterization of its characters. But at the exact same time, everything that happens that has any meaning or any impact at all only does so because of the games that it's based on. What's up, everybody? My name is Toxeyboyo, and today we're going to be talking about Season 2 of Devil May Cry from Netflix. I know I'm getting to it a little bit late, but if you're new here, that's what we do. Now, I did a review of the first season last year when it came out, and my verdict overall was that if it is your introduction to the Devil May Cry franchise, it's not the worst one. You know, the show itself isn't poor. It's got good animation, it's got good voice acting, and I would even say that it's paced decently. It's just that unfortunately it's called Devil May Cry, so I have certain expectations, and you know, there's something that I'm comparing it to pretty much constantly while I'm watching it. And maybe that's the fault of me as a viewer, but again, it's an adaptation of a game, not just of a game, but of a game that I've loved my entire life. I've been playing Devil May Cry for almost 20 years, you know, almost as long as it's existed. So there's a lot riding on this for me. The things that I did have quite a few gripes, mostly regarding the characters from the games. I didn't really like Dante's characterization. I'm still, even now, not entirely used to Johnny Young Bosch voicing the character because he does voice a different character in the same franchise. I didn't love how Lady was characterized. I didn't really love the tease and like the setup they did for Virgil. Especially because the first time Virgil technically appears, it's a shapeshifter demon looking like Virgil. But Dante hasn't seen Virgil since they were kids. So what? That's just Dante's going based on an assumption of what he might look like if he was still alive? I don't know. None of that matters, though. We're here to talk about Season 2. And the question on pretty much everyone's mind going in is, could this be better than Season 1? I say it was. In a lot of ways, I do think that White Rabbit was a really good villain for that first season. And Arius here, despite being from games and from a game that nobody really likes that much, he's almost unrecognizable in his characterization, but in a good way this time. The interesting thing about adapting material from Devil May Cry 2 is that it is considered the black sheep of the franchise. You know, for newcomers that talk about the games on TikTok or Twitter or really wherever, it's like, oh, which game should I play first? What order should I play them in? Because they might have known for a while that the order was considered to be 3-1-4-2, but now that Devil May Cry 5 is out, we know it's 3-1-2-4-5. And a lot of people will just say, hey, skip 2. 2 is bad. And while I agree 2 is a terrible game, it's one of the only 5 or 6 Devil May Cry games that exist. I really don't think we should be skipping it when there's so little material to begin with. Now, if you start playing it and you're like me and you don't want to finish it, that's totally fine. I did finish it, I just really regretted it. But when you're adapting material from the least popular game in the franchise, you kind of get to do whatever you want with it. So at the end of the first season, when they showed Arius, I'm like, I don't care about this guy. Like, I barely remember him. He was not interesting at all. Arius / Argus X the Chaos is like the least memorable final boss in all of Devil May Cry, and that's even counting half-destroyed Statue Mundus from the end of the first game. You know what I mean? But this time, you know, they gave him a new origin, a new backstory. They reworked his connection with Argus X. They gave him this new character quirk, spoilers, where every time he dies, he's reincarnated with his previous memories, so he spends like centuries working towards this goal. All of that was really interesting. Arius himself, though, I still don't feel much for him. But I think that in the context of this show and what they want the character to do, he works. It's just kind of interchangeable. You could put anybody in that role. You could have come up with another original character and put him in that same exact role. Arias is not a character that has so much like relevance with the fan base that like we're looking for certain things out of that character. Like Virgil is not an interchangeable character. You cannot swap Virgil from Devil May Cry 3 and Arias from Devil May Cry 2 and have the same story. You know what I mean? But that's kind of how I felt about Arias in the show. I liked him a lot more than I ever have, but I still don't feel much for the character. I do want to talk about Virgil, because he was all over the marketing for this season. It's like, this is the one where Dante and Virgil are going to face off. And that's a big deal. You know, the highest rated games in the franchise are Devil May Cry 1, 3, and 5. What do those games have in common? You fight Virgil with them. You know what I mean? Even if you didn't really know you were fighting Virgil right away in the first game, but you do fight Virgil in 1, 3, and 5. Those are the most popular games. People like Dante and Virgil content. So, does this show deliver good Dante Virgil content? I think that the dynamic between Dante and Virgil, while slightly different than the one from the games, is still really good. I think that it works for the show. Again, like this version of Dante and this version of Virgil that we have in the show, their dynamic together works really well for me. What I don't really like about Virgil, I think he loses his cool far too often. B, I don't think that he, this is gonna sound crazy, I don't think that he looks cool enough while he's fighting. Like, he's running around and stuff like that. And, like, I think Virgil just kind of, like, appears where he needs to be when he's fighting. At least when I'm playing as him or fighting against him, I've never really seen him run before. Like, he'll walk towards you menacingly, and then he'll teleport to where you are because he can use those summoned swords and teleport to them. That's how his powers kind of work. So he does not run, especially in combat. So he kind of loses a little bit of aura. Like, Virgil is Aura Man. That's what he is, and he doesn't really have a whole lot in this show. He raises his voice a little too often. Like, I think that he only shouts one time in the entirety of Devil May Cry 3, and it's when he's frustrated that the ritual isn't opening, or that the ritual isn't working and that the portal isn't opening. He can't get Sparta's power. That's it. He was frustrated because he was not getting power. That's how Virgil works. That's his character. And I just feel like there's a little bit of that missing. Him kind of being like a willing slave to Mundus because he'd been tricked. I don't love that either. I want to believe that Virgil would have figured it out. Like, I know that Mundus framed Argisax basically, but I don't know. Virgil's a pretty smart guy. You know, he figured out how to separate his human and demon halves when, as far as I know, he and Dante are the first ever half-breeds in the entire universe of Devil May Cry. So for him to figure out how to do that, pretty big deal. Now let's talk about Lady. She has... Oh, it's complicated because it seems like she's gonna have a whole lot more to do this season, but she kind of doesn't. Like, I don't know. Her entire function this season kind of just comes down to, like, she holds the sword at one point, you know? Like, I don't really think that she has too much actually to do with the plot as opposed to her driving a lot of it in the first season, which is, I mean, like, Devil May Cry 3 is an interesting case because, like, she shows up pretty much out of nowhere, and then you find out she's the daughter of this guy that's been working with Virgil, and you also find out that Arkham and Jester are the same person, and you find out that Lady's mother was a priestess, and so she has this special blood. They need her blood to complete the ritual and all that stuff. She's very important to the story of the third game, despite coming out of nowhere. Here she's pretty much there from the beginning, and then she kind of feels like she's getting less important as time goes on. But that's just me. I also, let's address the elephant in the room. Dante and Lady have been the #1 ship from Devil May Cry for the last 21 years. Because, of course, there's only so many women to go around, and Dante's not going to hook up with someone that's basically a clone of his mother. There's not a single male character in Devil May Cry who has any business being shipped with Trish. Lady, though, Dante and Lady seem like they'd be a good pairing. My thing is, the anime from like 2008 is considered canon, I believe. There's also 2 games that take place after Devil May Cry 1, where Lady is in them a lot more. I think that if Itsuno and the team at Capcom that gives us these Devil May Cry games wanted us to view Dante and Lady in a romantic light, they would have put that there themselves. I think that they would have had Dante and Lady at some point get together. They have not. I don't think that that's the intention for those characters, so I think that having them get together in the show feels like fan fiction. Is that crazy to say? Like, if there's... Obviously, this whole show is fan fiction. That's what adaptations are, especially when they stray so heavily from the original source material. But it feels particularly like fanfic because I think Adi Shankar just wants those 2 characters together. And so even though, like, yeah, there's a little bit of chemistry between the 2 of them in the first season, but it's just Dante fucking around for the most part, and Lady not really showing any real interest in him. While Dante is frozen in between seasons, I guess Lady fell in love with him. I don't know, it's crazy. Like, at the end of the season, she's saying all these mushy things about him, like how he's the best of humanity and whatever. And I'm like, I don't think she would ever say that. Now, I will also give you that Lady hasn't had much character since Devil May Cry 3. I get that. She gets relegated to complete side character. She barely has anything to say in Devil May Cry 5. I think she has 5 lines or less in DMC 5. And it bothers me. It does frustrate me. But because Devil May Cry 3 is the last time that we really see her as a character with her own autonomy and her own agency, her own agenda, that's the version of her that we have to compare this version of Lady to, especially because this is pretty much the beginning of the Devil May Cry story. These 2 seasons of the show are virtually an adaptation of Devil May Cry 1, 2, and 3. The tricky thing is that Devil May Cry 3 takes place 10 years before Devil May Cry 1. So we're speed running the entire PS2 trilogy, and it feels weird to me. Like, we've got the whole Nello Angelo statue Mundus thing from the first game, but that feels like it shouldn't happen until what happens at the end of this season, which is Virgil going to take on Mundus, that happens at the end of the 3rd game. And there's just so much weird stuff, especially because, like, they're fighting Argisax, and they're like, we can't take him down, he's too powerful. Dante asks Virgil if Argisax at his current power level were to fight Mundus, who would win? Virgil says Mundus. So they send Argisax to hell for Mundus to defeat him. I like that. I think that's brilliant. They have to, even if it's just temporarily, bring about the last thing that they wanted to happen. Like, this whole thing's been about avoiding opening the rift, and they have to do it in order to save the world. I like that. That's actually good storytelling. But then Dante and Virgil are like, you know what, let's fight Mundus. I'm sorry, you couldn't beat Argisax. You knew Mundus could. You were right. And now you want to fight Mundus? And then Dante and Virgil have their fight like I figured they'd fight early in the season and at the end of the season, because that's kind of how that's how Devil May Cry 3 works. You fight Virgil towards the middle of the game, you fight him again. You fight him towards the beginning, you fight him in the middle, and you fight him at the end. They don't have time for a 3rd fight. But they fight in like episode 2 of the season and then in episode 8. I knew they'd fight again in the finale. Very short fight, but they were using like imagery from Devil May Cry 5 when Virgil hits Dante with the sheath and then he grabs it, spins, and throws it back onto the blade, and the impact pushes Virgil back. I'm like, what the hell? And he's like, that night, if our positions were switched, would I have your life and you mine? That's a line from Devil May Cry 5. Why are we adapting the entire franchise? Anyway. What was I saying? Hang on, give me a second. Right. Virgil thinks he's gonna fight Mundus by himself and win? At the end of Devil May Cry 3, Virgil falls into hell and he takes on Mundus, even though he's very weak and wounded from his fight with Dante, and he knows he's not gonna fight. He's not gonna take down Mundus, but at least he can die trying. He wants to die standing on his feet. That's the kind of guy Virgil is. Like, even if I'm going into a fight that I cannot win, I will die chin up, chest out, on my feet, and proud. But here, Virgil really seems to think he can take down Mundus because he wants to usurp him. But that doesn't make any sense. The ending is so silly. And then, of course, we're dealing with the main villain of the second game in Argus Hex the Chaos, so like all of the Arias and Argus Hex stuff is in the second game. Dante and Virgil's direct feud, very much third game. Jester's presence in the story, very much third game. And it's funny because, like, they want you to feel this impact. It's like, oh, it's this big twist that you know, Lady's father is alive and that he's Jester, but it's like, I knew that. Because for as much as they want to play around with the lore from the games, there are some things that you know they're not going to change. Like, obviously, Nello Angelo was still gonna be Virgil. Obviously, Jester is still gonna be Arkham. Like, there are some things that they're not going to change around. And it's like, either commit to your new vision and your new idea for what the Devil May Cry story is, or just adapt it faithfully. Don't pick and choose what gets to stay in. That it ends up being not a surprise at all to fans of the game, and that it ends up also not having any impact as a reveal for people who are just watching the show. The reveal that Nello Angelo was Virgil doesn't mean anything if you're just watching the show. You don't know anything about that. Like, you could say the same thing about the first game, but guess what? Dante and Nello Angelo actually met in the first season. Dante finds out at the end of the first game that his brother is still alive, and that he had been corrupted by Mundus. That's why his personality is different in the second game, because he lost him for real this time. But whatever. I mean, there are some improvements from the first season. Like, I do think that the writing is a little bit better. Lady isn't as cringe as she was. Dante, I feel like, has more to do in the story that's about him. There's less political commentary, but I still don't think that there should be any when it comes to Devil May Cry. That was one of the biggest criticisms of the reboot game from 2013, DMC Devil May Cry, is that, you know, we have this Bill O'Reilly parody character, and then we're going, like, modern, and we're trying to have this commentary about consumerism and stuff like that, and it's like, I'm not here to say that there's no place in the zeitgeist for games that talk about that kind of thing. I do think that Devil May Cry is the wrong place to put it. You can put it in Final Fight if you want. You can put it in Street Fighter. I don't think it belongs in Devil May Cry because it's just there's just no room for that kind of thing. Like, we don't deal with big cities in Devil May Cry. We don't seem to have a United States in Devil May Cry. Like, the story is pretty paper thin most of the time. It's just there to get you from one boss fight to the next. And I'm saying that as somebody who's played every Devil May Cry game multiple times, including 2. Okay? So I don't want to hear it. If you disagree with that, that's fine. But I'm not a LARPer. I swear to God, I'm not a LARPer. But on the topic of, like, some of those improvements having been made, Season 1 came out in, I think, like, January or February last year. I can't exactly remember. I want to say January. And then Season 2 just came out in May. May of this year. I do not think that, 16 months? I don't think 16 months is enough time to release your show, watch and read reviews and reactions, take into account the feedback that you're getting from the audience, write a new season, storyboard a new season, animate a new season, voice act a new season, and get it out. So these changes were implemented before season 1 ever came out. Did they make season 1 worse on purpose? I don't understand. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, is season 2 better than season 1? Yes, considerably. Is it a good show? Sure. Again, if it is your first exposure to Devil May Cry, I wonder if you are getting a lot more enjoyment out of it than I am. Am I at all excited for a 3rd season? No. Unless they want to do a huge time skip. I will also point out that it's very good they got rid of the Limp Bizkit opening that they were using. They used what seems like an original song and a much shorter opening. Good job. Good job, Adi. I'm sure that there is a 3rd season in the works. The show does seem to be very popular. I don't know what the 3rd season would be adapting. In a perfect world, it would be another original villain. I don't want a huge time skip just to justify Nero being in it. I'm also not in a rush to get right back into Virgil. I do think that Virgil works best when we get a break from him. That's why his return in Devil May Cry 5 was such a big deal, because he was not in 4. To be fair, how could he be in 4 when he turned into a beam of light at the end of the first game? But that doesn't matter. I mean, how did Dante get out of hell when he was stuck there at the end of Devil May Cry 2? These things just don't matter too much. But Devil May Cry 2, I'd give it maybe a 6.5 out of 10. I gave the first season maybe a 3. So, and it's not just its merit as its own show, it's also how it stacks up as an adaptation of a well-established IP. So, all that out of the way, have you seen the Devil May Cry show, season 2 particularly? If you have seen it, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. And also, while you're down there, tell me what game you loved growing up that you hope gets an adaptation in the near future. I'd love to hear about it. For me, I think that a Red Dead Redemption movie, a Dead Space movie made by made by John Carpenter would be incredible. And I hope that the stars align for that to be a real thing one day. Anyway, that's all I got for you. See you later.